President Biden, you saved democracy in 2020.
It's time to pass the torch and let us choose a new nominee.
One who can bring new energy, new hope.
And make
A
sure
new
Donald
Democratic
Trump
group
never
released this
gets near
ad
the White
today.
House again.
Pass the torch. Pass the torch.
Pass the torch.
Pass the Torch is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Joining us now, chair of the Biden-Harris campaign.
But this morning, President Biden's campaign were insisting he's still in the race.
The president is the leader of our campaign and of the country, and he is clearly, in our impression and what we've built and in our engagement with voters, he is the best person to take on Donald Trump.
After landing in Delaware last night, the president is recovering from COVID and considering his future as his party squabbles.
The party right now has two camps. There's one camp that believes that Biden should not run and he won't say so on the record. There's another camp that believes that Biden should not run, and they're afraid to say so on the record because they don't want to further damage him in case he does run.
So, friends, I say the contrast between Joe Biden and Donald Trump is like night and day.
Vice President Harris is still praising her boss in every speech. But as money and support drain away from President Biden, Democrats are beginning to ask, will the torch now pass to her?
Well, Lindsay is with me now here, literally on the hot tin roof. Lindsay, what else are you hearing?
Well, I've been talking to an African-American pastor who's quite close to the Biden family, and he told me that there is a lot of concern about the president's health. But he also said, he said, for the African-American community there in Delaware, the home state, he said, look, there is a sense now of thank you, Joe, but you got to go. Maybe more importantly, it's the issue of the money, follow the money, because the mega donors to the Biden-Harris ticket, they have given half as much this month, July, as last month, June. They raised 50 million last month. So far this month, only 25 million, and nothing more is coming. So that is of great concern to the people who run the Democratic Party.
And the Republicans tell me that they've raised something like 400 million US dollars since his conviction at the end of May. Since Trump's conviction. Interesting thing in the Biden campaign, he's almost using kind of populist rhetoric against the elites in his own party. What's that all about?
Well, you know, you hear that also from ordinary Democratic voters. When I'm speaking to Democratic voters, they're saying, what are the elites, in their view, the leaders of our party doing? Because they see chaos at the top. And what they say is that they, in the grassroots, they'll do whatever they're told in the end. They will campaign for Kamala, they will campaign for Joe, they will campaign for whoever it is. But they need to know, and they need to know now.
Lindsay, thank you very much indeed. Well, joining me now from the campaign trail in one of the year's key swing states of North Carolina is Democratic pollster and political strategist Simon Rosenberg. Simon, it's great to have you back on the program. We are, of course, a no-votes nation in all of this, but we are watching very closely. And what people in Britain want to know is Biden in? Is Biden out? And if he's not out, why not?
So Joe Biden is the Democratic nominee for president. And as he told us again today, he intends to be the candidate and run. I think that we are having a debate inside of our family about whether that's the best course. And I think however we resolve this, it needs to be resolved very soon. Donald Trump has gained a few points in the polls, not too many. I mean, it's still a very close and competitive election, but we need to come together and unite around whatever the solution is as soon as possible in order to make sure we can win this election and beat Donald Trump.
But people have been telling me that for weeks now, as soon as possible, time is running out. Yep. We're going to have this debate in the family. I mean, it's TikTok is all I can hear.
It is TikTok. And I think this weekend is very important. I think the president needs to do one more round of check-ins with party leaders to check the polling. We're going to know much more about where he stands and Donald Trump stands coming out of the Republican convention. I think there was a lot of, I think Democrats felt very encouraged by Donald Trump's incoherent, babbling, crazy pants speech last night that I think was a huge missed opportunity for Donald Trump to gain new voters. This is still, in our system, I mean, 3.5 months may sound like a lifetime in the UK, but for us, we're still a long way away from people voting, and a lot can happen. But it is imperative that Joe Biden be the party leader, bring the party together, come up with a clear solution, and let's get moving and go win this election.
But frankly, even though Donald Trump's speech last night was rambling and, there were dozens of reported lies in that speech, at least he sounds as if he's got a working pulse. He can make it from A to B. And I'm sorry, that is not the impression you get with Joe Biden. So my question is this. If democracy really is on the line, if the republic really is in peril, why on earth are you gambling on someone like Joe Biden at this stage?
Well, we had a primary and Joe Biden won, and he is the nominee of the party. And, for us to have someone else, it would require him to voluntarily step aside. There isn't any mechanism to remove him at this point, given that he went in front of voters and he won the nomination. And he won it handily, by the way. I mean, there was no significant opposition to him in the primary. And so I think the only way, the only possibility for Joe Biden to step, for this to have an outcome other than Biden-Harris, which I still think is by far and away the most likely outcome. And I'll take some exception to your characterization that Joe Biden doesn't have a pulse. I think there's a little bit more there than that. And but I think that the way this would have to work is that Joe Biden would have to decide that after this weekend, and I think that he has made a decision that for health reasons and others that he will pass the torch, and then in all likelihood it would be Kamala Harris plus somebody she chooses to be vice president. And and I think that if you look at polling, Kamala Harris is actually polling just as well or even better than Joe Biden in many polls. And so I think we have two good choices here as we go forward.
But the problem is that even if he makes it to the 5th of November, even if he were to win this election, you can't possibly say, can you, at this stage, that Joe Biden is going to, run this country for another 4 months, possibly, let alone 4 years. It just seems incomprehensible.
Listen, I think you mentioned earlier in your piece that Jen O'Malley Dillon, the campaign chair, did a major interview, a 20-minute long interview on MSNBC this morning, one of our networks here. And she said something that was very important to me, which is that they're aware that there are significant doubts about his capacity to both win the election and concerns about his health, right, after what happened in the debate, and that they have work to do to bring people along. I think that was important. It was because, frankly, the attitude of the campaign up to this point has been, we're running, damn the torpedoes, we need everybody to get on board. And I think them acknowledging that there are serious and legitimate concerns that have to be addressed, by the campaign, it was an important, it may not sound important, but it was important here as a signal that they know they have work to do. There was humility coming from the campaign instead of bravado. And I think that which is, I think, a required sentiment in order for us to make adjustments and changes in order for us to win the election, because we're not winning the election today. And we need to change if we want to win.
Okay. Okay, and we'll get back to you in a couple of weeks or months, hopefully, about how this is all panning out. Simon Rosenberg, thank you very much indeed. He is, he said, only here by the grace of God. And the Republican faithful lapped up Donald Trump's address to their national convention last night. His first speech since the government came breathtakingly close to taking his life. The delegates' enthusiasm was undimmed by the speech's length, more than 1.5 hours, ending so late that much of America, frankly, would have been tucked up in bed by then. Trump said that he wanted to unify the country, but his remarks were laced with barbs against his political opponents and many others. Our Washington correspondent, Siobhan Kennedy, listened to all of it.
The Trump camp told us he was in low-key and reflective mood, but they apparently forgot to tell the stage director, for this was a presidential entrance worthy of a Vegas showroom, with Donald Trump, the prize fighter, knocked down, but back up and ready for another round.
I stand before you in this arena only by the grace of Almighty God.
This was the first time Trump had spoken publicly since a bullet came shockingly close to taking his life during a rally less than a week ago.
I will tell you exactly what happened, and you'll never hear it from me a second time because it's actually too painful to tell.
But he couldn't not tell it. The description of that defiant fist.
I raised my right arm and started shouting, "Fight, fight, fight."
And the life-saving moment when he turned his head to look at a chart during the rally as the would-be assassin's bullet clipped his ear.
Last time I put up that chart, I never really got to look at it. But without that chart, I would not be here today.
He said he'd ripped up his original speech and replaced it with a more somber, unifying message. And for a while, it seemed he had.
The discord and division in our society must be healed. We must heal it quickly.
At one moment, he even kissed the helmet of the firefighter who was shot and killed that day. But then came the Trumpian pivot.
The election result, we're never going to let that happen again. They used COVID to cheat. We're never going to let it happen again.
He just couldn't help himself. Trump's prepared remarks became peppered with a rambling greatest hits of grievances the red meat MAGA was waiting for.
The Republican platform promises to launch the largest deportation operation in the history of our country. The Democrat Party should immediately stop weaponizing the justice system. It's two things in day one, right? Drill, baby, drill, and close our borders.
Earlier, the stage had been transformed, almost carnival-like, for the hero's return. There was Melania with a Beethoven backtrack. Kid Rock, who got the crowd dancing, sort of. And Hulk Hogan, not quite ripping his shirt off. But no doubt Joe Biden and his precarious candidacy was the real backdrop.
Only going to use the term once. Biden. I'm not going to use the name anymore, just one time.
Trump definitely beats Biden on energy, but he too was hard to follow in places.
Make it a little nicer and a little point at the top instead of a flat nose. Has anyone seen Silence of the Lambs? The late, great Hannibal Lecter. I could stop wars with a telephone call.
Well, against all the odds, Donald Trump has once again accepted the Republican presidential nomination. I am running to be president of all America, not half America. That's his cry for unity. It sounds great in here tonight, but how long will it last?
It's amazing! Go Trump! Woo! Just incredible joy. I just feel so positive about the future, and I just know he's going to make it right. I could not be more elated at this moment. Save America. Amazing. Trump is the amazing.
No words.
No words. Donald Trump, he's that tough cookie commander-in-chief. This is Ginger Donald, MAGA.
I thought I'd seen it all.
We're making America sweet again.
So the return of the MAGA king is complete. The party utterly transformed in his image. They believe they're headed all the way to the White House. The only question left unanswered, who will he be running against?
Siobhan Kennedy reporting from Milwaukee. Well, earlier I spoke to Donald Trump's niece, Mary Trump, a psychologist and author who's written a book about the family, not a very flattering one, I have to say. I began by asking her if she thought that Mr. Trump's speech at the convention showed that he'd become a changed man after that attempt on his life.
It is just another instance in which America's corporate media is failing its citizens, that we're hearing that Donald is a changed man, that he's had some kind of existential experience, that he's softer. And then we hear him go on to mock his political opponents, mock the fact that Nancy Pelosi's husband was brutally attacked with a hammer and almost killed. He is incapable of change, and he always has been. Just as he was never going to become presidential, he's never going to be able to unite this country because he thrives in division.
You saw the family there, the former First Family, the family that hopes to be First Family again on the stage. You're, of course, estranged from that family. And there were some notable presences. I mean, Melania Trump had been in a kind of witness protection program for the last few months, if not years. We barely see her. She was there, so was Ivanka and Jared. What does that family picture tell you?
Well, every relationship in my family is transactional. So clearly they believe that there's some benefit to them for showing up. given the fact that, as you pointed out, none of those three people has been anywhere to be seen in perhaps years.
I wonder, Mary, whether you reached out to your uncle after his near-death experience, or perhaps he reached out to you.
With Donald, no, I did not reach out. He did not reach out to me. It's a very good thing that he was not harmed on Saturday.
You've been very critical of your uncle in the past, the first time round he served as president. What do you think a second Trump administration would look like should he get re-elected?
It would be a total disaster. And if we learn nothing else this week, what we should have learned is that Donald and his campaign and his enablers are full of vengeance and grievance. And that is going to be the driving force behind how they govern, if I can use that word loosely.
Given how gloomy your view is of a second Trump administration, do you think that Joe Biden, who is still the nominee for the Democratic Party, can actually beat Donald Trump? Or should the Democrats, as many people are saying, hurry up with finding someone else?
I continue to believe that President Biden and Vice President Harris are the strongest ticket we have. Right now, knowing what I know, I think it would be absolutely foolish to squander the power of incumbency.
Mary Trump, thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. Good to see you.